not the audience I needed. I paid like $1,000. I'm gonna be as honest as I can. This is gold. Gained 1 million views. Oh my god, you're starting to cry. I'm dating an American. I'm dating an American. This content is not about you at all. Like half a second shots that are always changing. Hi guys, my name is Salta and you're listening to Salta's podcast. This is my first episode. And today I want to share my story of how I grew 100k followers on Instagram. And let me just back up and go back to 2016, 2017. That's when I kind of started playing with posting content and creating content, and I knew nothing about posting anything or how social media worked. Back in those days we would just post things of like what we eat or pictures of our friends. And I remember at that time there was this mass following, and my friend was a software engineer, and he was like, do you want like 3,000 followers from this mass following tool that I created? I was like, sure, yeah, I do want it. And at that time I remember I started my singing career too, and I was like recording some songs, so I needed some exposure and I didn't know how to do it. So he probably helped me get like that first 3,000 followers, because I would follow them and they would follow me back, and it was like this whole thing that existed back then. At that time I started creating some more content about myself. I would share some tips, some like books that I read, and like some kind of summaries. A few years later I was opening a coffee shop, so I needed exposure for that, so I paid like around $500 or $1,000 for some kind of giveaway participation, where they were giving away an apartment in Kazakhstan. So they signed me up to that, and I got 75,000 followers from that giveaway, and that was insane. But all of those people were not the audience I needed, and I obviously didn't know that I didn't need that audience. I was afraid to post for that audience, so it was like a whole vicious cycle of like getting people on my account that I didn't need. So over the years I would keep posting content, but obviously those people were not interested in that content, and all of those people unfollowed me over the years, and I had about 25,000 left. And at that point I was already creating some content for YouTube, and people from YouTube started coming to my Instagram account. And that was already 2022 when I decided to come to the US to study acting in New York. And so I came here and I started documenting my journey of like studying to be an actress. And because I was 32 when I came here in New York, it was a shocking content. So when I started making videos, and at that time Reels started to catch on and we could grow organically. So before like 2021, first of all, we didn't have Reels in Kazakhstan for a while, and before that the only way you could grow was paying some other creators to feature you on their page, or pay for target ads, or things like that. So you had to pay for any kind of visibility. Like 2021, 2022 is when Reels started to be very big, and I started learning how to do them. And when I came here, it was like a perfect first of all, content that I could capture and share, and I learned how to use Reels. I was taking like multiple courses. I started sharing my journey, and one video that I made, I shared my whole like background story of how I moved like 10 months ago. I moved to the US, and like I was chasing my dream of becoming an actress. And in the first days, like I couldn't find my apartment, so I told my whole story of like how I ended up in New York, and how I couldn't get a visa first, and then how I found my apartment. So all of those stories in one video that I made gained 1 million views and brought me 40,000 followers, and that was crazy to me. But at that point I knew what kind of things work to attract audience and followers, and I'm going to share them with you in this episode. And I'm going to be as honest as I can. I'm going to be sharing all the secrets, so I hope nobody's listening and resharing everything, because this is gold. Like basically this is something that will help you grow your audience and gain followers and get all those views. So yeah, let's start from the fact that when I started posting in 2022, so my biggest growth happened from 2022 in April, when I started posting about the US and my journey here, and that was about 2 years ago, a little less than that. But at that point I had an idea of like posting every day. So I would start those 30-day challenges, and that was the only like rule I had for myself. I was like, you have to post some kind of video today. That would like get rid of my perfectionism and would get rid of things that when I get it in my own way and when I would overthink too much. So I just, pushed whatever was ready, whatever I could make that day. And sometimes the videos that I thought would be like ridiculous or would not get views, they would like go viral, or the video that I would work like for hours would not get that many views. So at that point I realized like I'm not the best judge of the video that I make, but I control like the quality that I can make, the best quality that I can, and post it, and then the audience decides. So one of the first things that I suggest, start those 30-day challenges, because you cannot grow if you don't have content. Basically, you have to post every day. That's something that will help you, first of all, get out of your comfort zone. Second of all, just not overthink too much and post something. Number 2 is like tell stories. Storytelling is the biggest trend for Instagram growth, and if you just pack a lot of like life hacks or your life story or anything that you can pack into a story, it could be just like 5 sentences. It doesn't have to be something crazy, but stories are something that we've had for centuries, for thousands of years. We are attentive when we listen to stories, when we know the context, when we know who's who and where is that coming from. So there's like all that connection, and this is why like all those movies work where they have a whole like storytelling storylines. And when we sit by the fire and tell stories, that's also like something that we love. Or we sit like and have conversations at dinner, that's also stories. So this is the best format for us to learn. So we have to utilize that, and that's something that works the best. Basically, that's how we can sit down and listen, and we increase our average watch time on videos. So we have to tell stories. The other thing is like how you tell stories. That's a separate topic. But second thing that I keep in mind always is to use emotions, because that's also, again, social media is a place where we look for social connections basically, and we want to see people, and people have emotions, and that's what's very real and authentic about people, and we want to see that. And when we see people being sad, when we see people being happy, or they say something like, yay, I made it, or this wasn't the best day, so we always are drawn towards those emotions, and we want to learn more about that. Those drive engagement and interaction with content, and we can relate to emotions. And emotions are something that we have every day. Today you could be like happy, tomorrow you could be sad about something, disappointed, or you could be excited. So there's millions of different emotions that exist, and they're so ingrained into our life that if we don't see that range of emotions of some kind of content creator, if it's always happy or if it's always like sad, that's weird, because we go through all those different emotions every day. So using those emotions and using them in the first shot, basically, where you're like, oh my god, or you're starting to cry or something like that. So whenever you incorporate emotions, that's very attractive for viewers basically. Another thing that I keep in mind is the smaller is your niche, the better and faster you're going to grow, and that applies to any kind of media like YouTube, Twitter, whatever. Like if you choose something small, it's easier for people to recognize if this content is for them and if they want to stick around and follow you. So I was choosing my specific niche, and I knew my audience because that's exactly the content that I was interested in, like literally a year ago or 2 years ago. So my niche was a single girl in her 30s moving to New York City to chase her dreams. And that's very specific niche, and every video that I made was through that lens. So I knew what kind of audience is going to watch my videos and what kind of answers they're looking for. So if you describe the audience, the industry that I was making content was lifestyle content, and the category was immigration. Subcategory was moving to the US, and the audience was women mostly, educated women 25 to 50 years old, and the even narrower group would be immigrant girls 25 to 45 years old who are interested in the US. So there's a lot of women who are Russian speaking, and they live all around the world, and they immigrate to different countries, not necessarily to the US. It could be Australia, Canada, whatever. So they're all going through similar experiences, and they all can relate to my content. Next thing that I keep in mind is knowing my wow factors. I call them wow factors because that's something that people associate you with. So for example, the fact that I moved to the US when I was 32 was like a big wow factor because first of all, I don't look like I'm 32 or 34, and second of all is because I was starting everything from scratch and I was like, I'm gonna pursue my acting career. And so that was something that people would get inspired by because at 32 nobody starts something new. I mean, at least it wasn't a trend back in the days. And they would get inspired. They'd be like, oh, I want to chase my childhood dream. So that was a wow factor. And you have to keep in mind, like, for example, I would always repeat those factors. I'd be always like saying those things. For example, I'm like dating an American right now, and I'd be saying, I'm dating an American, I'm dating an American. That's something that triggers people, and it's not always the positive feedback, but people are, that's a wow factor basically. That's something that not many people do, but I mean a lot of people do, but it's like unique to me, and that's always bringing attention. So the latest video that I posted got almost 400,000 views just because I said like I'm dating an American and how this is how I met him. I know my wow factors and I'm telling my story over and over again in different formats. So until you are Oprah or Beyonce or whatever, like Kardashian, you have to tell your story all over and over again because not everybody watches your, like, every piece of content you make, first of all, and people forget, or some facts come up like later in the picture. So you just have to keep talking about those like pillars, and you have to keep like underlining some wow factors that people always like surprised by, like my acting, or like me being 32, or like I'm dating American, or living in New York. So all of those things are something that is like catchy. Another thing is like having a visually appealing account and good quality videos. So that is something that you learn over time, like how to film yourself in the best angle, how to have the best lighting, how to have like the most professional looking feed, or what kind of profile picture do I use, or what kind of shots I select for my videos. So all of those things you have to keep in mind, and you have to always do your best to make it the best quality. For example, I dress up when I film. I go to the best locations with most interesting background. Let's say if I talk about New York, I have to be like with Brooklyn Bridge like behind me, you know. So I have to keep those things in mind, and I have to select the most visually appealing shots. And that's how like your whole feed, your whole content starts to look more professional. Next thing I keep in mind is I always think about what is there for other people. There's one mistake that I see when people start making content. They always post themselves, and they always like are very self-conscious about how they look, but they start like making content for themselves. Basically, they like stand in the mirror, or like they look the best and they wanna look the best for people, but it's not about you. Like, this content is not about you at all. This is about other people and you bringing value, or you entertaining them, or you educating them. So like, it doesn't matter how you look if you're just like, you know, bragging about things that you've achieved, and you're not sharing how to get there, and you're not giving your life hacks or tips or things like that. Like, you have to think about other people. And one thing that helps me when I create content, I think about how can I serve other people. And when I think about that, that completely switches the content that I make. I don't say like, oh, this is what I achieved, like I'm so cool. I just share, this is what I achieved, but this is how you can get there. And that's a whole different angle. Hooks and titles is something that is very important, because people just scroll, and they scroll like in the first half second they see your video. So you have to be able to grab their attention by some kind of hooks, which is emotions, as I shared before, and titles. So the titles should be very intriguing, and you have to work and think like through for your titles. And one thing that I noticed when I was taking the YouTube course from Ali Abdal, he writes down 10 different titles for his YouTube videos, and then he selects one of those that's like the most intriguing. So you have to choose something that's very intriguing. You have to think very hard about the titles, because if people are not caught by your title, if people are not intrigued by your title, they're not going to see all of that hard work you did after. They're not even gonna like stick around there. So keep that in mind. Choosing trendy audio, trendy music, sometimes this works, but this is not something that I pay attention to the most, but you have to use some audio that has not been used too much and it's trending, like less than 10,000 uses. And next one is making your reels as short as possible. So when people ask like what's the optimal duration of a video that you should post, I'm like, as short as possible. So if you can get rid of some kind of aspect of your video without losing the main message, like then you have to cut it out. You have to increase your average watch time basically, and the only way for you to do that is to cut the video as much as possible until like there is the absolute most important stuff in it that is gonna contain, like that's gonna be like your own main message basically. And the last thing that I keep in mind is that your videos have to be dynamic and they have to have some kind of movement. So if it's just like still video for 50 seconds and you just sit there and do nothing, like nobody's gonna stick around. But if it's like half a second shots that are always changing, or there's something that's always like moving, there's some kind of emojis, there's some kind of like something happening in the video, and then there's text going over it, that's the best, because people want to be entertained, they want to learn, they want to do all of those things in one video. So we live in a day and age where people don't have much attention span, so we have to keep that in mind and make the video as entertaining, as like dynamic as possible. So these are all the things I wanted to share with you today. This is what helped me to grow to 100K followers. And yeah, let me know if you want me to talk about anything in more detail. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. I'm going to share more about content creation, marketing, growth, and I'm going to share a little bit about my personal life too. So let me know what kind of episodes you're interested in, and I'm going to have some more guests who are content creators too. So yeah, I'll see you in my next episode. Bye.